Okay, Jamie, we have you for an hour. We've met before in the studio where we filmed your recipe, which is now live on heavychef.com. So I encourage anybody on the call to go and check it out. It is amazing, Jamie, and it was such a treat to spend some time with you in between your various other duties as a multi-award-winning South African entrepreneur, innovator, thought leader. I mean, you co-founded Loop, which is a mobility fintech platform, and we'll get to a little bit about that in a short while. I mean, you're also the co-founder of Social Hack. You're an Invest Cape Town ambassador. Your impact has been recognized globally, including as a global under 40 winner and a UN TOYP award recipient. And for those of you who are uninitiated, that means the 10 outstanding young people, and that's an international award. So it's casual. So I want to ask you, my man, like besides doing slides and Ubers, how do you spend your day? What is an average day in the life of Jamie Thurston Wyngaard look like? And welcome, by the way.
I don't know how I average the days off, but thank you so much. I think that's quite a good introduction. I'm sitting like, oh, that guy sounds cool, but it's the way you make me sound.
He is pretty cool.
So I need to start my day off with my calendar. And I feel like Google did a really good job with the calendar app, but it works. So I used to wake up and open Instagram long time ago. And now I wake up and the first thing I check is, what's my plan for today? Even though that's the last thing I check as well before I go to sleep to make sure I'm prepared for the next day. But when I wake up, I also see is anything new added to my calendar. Because it's not just on my side. I've got a team. They've got access to my calendar as well. They put things in or move things around. I just go with the flow. I just check what needs to happen. Where do I need to be? What must I do? And make sure I'm able to fulfill those needs. So it does get kind of hectic. Even right now, there was things I had to move around because of the Joburg trip. What can be moved? What can be postponed? What can be shoved into spaces? But an average day for Jamie, it's a lot of work. I want to really rest. I'm waiting to retire. But there's a lot that has to happen, and there's a lot of different things. But the nice thing about the calendar and the nice thing that I've been able to handle is partition your time. Set out time slots for different things. I even set out days for different things. So I have certain days for in-person meetings, certain days for online meetings, certain days where I have, like on my Fridays, is demo days with my team, where everyone presents what their work was for the week, what they've learned, what new course they took on. So those days are more showcasey versus days where it's like high back-to-back meetings and those things. So those are ways that I kind of manage it. But the days, I can't say what's an average day because a day fluctuates. Last week, I was in Seychelles, literally in Seychelles. And it was interesting because Seychelles is beautiful. I still had to do my work, South African work, and also had to do my Seychelles work, what I was doing there. And then we flew back with the president of Seychelles to Mauritius on last week Friday.
Do you chunk your day? I mean, do you do like 15-minute increments or do you do like half hour? I mean, is there a certain way that you divide your calendar?
Sure. My chunks are in hours. And then I look, I'm going to say this. We try to have the structure, but things happen where a client will ask, can I have an emergency meeting? Then I just have to figure a way to fit it in. Like I had a client meeting now for 12 o'clock and I had to ask them, can I please move to 1:30? Just because that's the time when we're available. So things do happen where I have to move things around, but they are primarily in chunks. I've got my planning time. I've got time to check my emails. I've got time for traveling. So I factor in how long it takes to get from one point to another point. And then also, what do I do in a traveling time? So like in this case, I was traveling to the airport and in my traveling time, I had to finish my presentations. And literally, I think that the commute was about 15 minutes and I was able to finish my presentations in that 15 minutes. And when I got to the airport, I was done and I emailed my slides off. So manage the time effectively and do chunk it out. So they are quite chunks. And because of all the different stuff that I'm doing, I need to partition it. And there's different people involved in different things. Some of the people kind of overlap. For instance, like I have my operations manager for Social Hack, who also does a lot of grant funding applications for like some of my other businesses. So I have meeting with her that we keep the things separate, but there's times when I get to see her at the same time and talk about all the things together. Well, in one topic at a time. Yeah, but it's partitioning things makes it way easier to manage a life really. Even if you have to, like in the case of me speaking to Chris, the operation manager, even when I have to talk about different topics, I wear different hats, and only at that time will you have this Jamie. I'll have my ambassador hat on, I'll have my loop hat on, I'll have my boomerang hat on. So I'm not gonna also talk about a whole bunch of different things at the same time. I think I need that because I don't like it when that gets done to me because you don't get you don't get to finish one thing. Get the topic, unpack what the issues are, solve that. Let's move on to the next thing.
The life of an entrepreneur, it sounds like you're compartmentalizing is a bit of a superpower for you, even though it is challenging for anybody. And I wanted to know, I mean, just maybe for the audience, can you give us just a quick rundown of what is Loop for the uninitiated?
Sure. So Loop, I'll tell you the whole story of how we started. I'm actually trying to get some of the Loop money out of my bag to show you guys. But Loop started with Imtiaz Riley, and he came to me and he said he wants to solve payments in the minibus taxi space. So I'm like, okay, great. That sounds like an interesting discussion. And he told me the story of his dad and how his father had to phone him in the morning. This is me trying to find the cash in my bag. Here we go. He told me the story of his dad. Oh, it's not in here.
You're gonna
Wrong
have to
bag,
drive
that's
back.
why. No, I got it. Wrong bag. He told me the story of his dad and how his dad would call him in the morning and show up with a taxi full of people and phone him and say, come stand outside. And his father will hand him a bag of money and say, put the money in the cupboard. And that made him to us think of why are we still working in cash in today's times? Because he knew that if his dad continued to travel with the money, they're driving through Manenberg, which is plain, there's a high chance that they could get robbed or some gangsters say, hey, do you have any money for me? When they ask you that, you kind of have to give. And then we thought of how do we solve that in that space? And I said, okay, great. We had the idea of making an app, but I said, before we build anything, before we start with this idea, before it sounds great, but let's start to unpack why this hasn't worked and why are people doing it the way they're doing it right now. So that's when we started doing design thinking, and we looked at why are people using cash? Why are people not using digital payments or these things in the taxis? And what we discovered was that it wasn't that I thought people are the taxi drivers want to avoid tax. Simple answer. We thought that's the answer. When the truth was, cash is just so easy to use. If I pay the taxi driver right now in cash, they get the money right now, they can use the money right now and it works. If I have to do an EFT to you, it means that you have to wait a day or two for your money and there's a bank charge on top of that. So if you're taking a taxi and the taxi costs 10 Rand, but now I must pay a bank charge on top of my taxi fee, not going to work. So people have tried solving in the taxi space many times before, but because they were using traditional banking rails, it didn't work. We then created our own payment system. This is one of the vouchers that you get to scan, and you get a $10 via WhatsApp. And we're using WhatsApp because when we started asking about an app, nobody wants more apps on their phones. So we thought, since nobody wants more apps on their phones, can we deliver our system in a way that is familiar and without people needing to download an app? They already have WhatsApp. All of our customers that are taking taxis to and from work are using WhatsApp. So we built a system using WhatsApp as the interface to be able to make and receive payments with no bank charges and instant payments. And that is how Loop started. Then two things happened to the business from there. The commuters were paying the taxi drivers via WhatsApp, and they were asking us, hey, I've got a side business. I do things I sell Tupperware, or I sell Avon, or I do these things, I do massages. Can people pay me like this? And we realized, hey, actually, the payment solution we built wasn't just for taxis, but the payment solution can be for anybody that doesn't like waiting for their money or doesn't like the bank charges. That's number one. The second thing that happened to the business was corporates were not able to hire taxis. Before, a corporate would never go to a taxi rank and say, get me 10 taxis, here's 10,000 Rand. They will never do that. But with our platform, because we vetted drivers, charter permits, PDP, and put them on our platform, corporates were able to use our service for their staff transport. And this has been probably one of the biggest booms for the company because we then started building software to solve things for corporate mobility. The biggest clients we have in Western Cape now are the BPOs, so the call centers, and the city of Cape Town is doing a big push towards BPOs because it creates so much jobs. The problem, I'll say this, is that during the apartheid time, because of how the city was set up, all the townships were moved so far to the city that even though the workers in the city, they need to get to and from the city. So because of that push of people outside of the city, they have to have transport. But with call centers, because they're operating in America or Australia and hours with international clients, their working times falls outside of public transport. So now we need transport for these people. With the taxi industry, they would usually do a peak time in the mornings and a peak time in the evenings, and then in the middle they wouldn't have trips, or in the evening they wouldn't have trips. The taxi will just go sleep, park and go sleep, basically. But now with Loop, those taxis that are up to scratch to be on our platform are getting additional trips, additional revenue they would never have received before. The other thing we solved in the space when it comes to mobility is that when corporates use private companies like Ubers or other private shuttles, the locals didn't like, and I'm sure you still hear this in the news, when other drivers come into certain areas. And the thing about Western Cape is a lot of the call center agents are living in your areas like Mitchells Plain, Kailicha, Dunoon, all over, but the majority of them are in Manenberg and these places. Well, those are the biggest areas in the Cape Town anyway. So it wasn't nice when private companies got into those places. So what we are doing is we assign a Manenberg crypto Manenberg driver, a Mitchells Plain crypto Mitchells Plain driver. And that makes it even easier for the corporates because now the stuff is a bit safer. There's a bit more comfort because the driver knows the area. So we're solving quite a lot of problems, and it all started with payments. Just being able to pay someone digitally opened up a whole new industry for the emerging market.
From the way you describe it, Jamie, I mean, it's fascinating to hear the evolution of the company. It sounds like, I mean, you have most definitely a really powerful platform which solves for a lot of problems. But in the beginning, it didn't seem that way. It felt like it sounds like it was, you went straight into a problem that was focused and that needed to be solved. And that eventuated into a platform upon which all the corporates could then start being activated and onboarded, and then you could leverage the relationship between the drivers and the commuters, and that whole ecosystem that surrounded it. Was that part of the plan, or was that something that as you iterated, the opportunity became far more clear to you?
So what I'll say, it actually became a problem because as entrepreneurs, and I'm sure any entrepreneur listening to this, we chase opportunities. We literally had to curb ourselves when it comes to opportunity. We had to list, because we built something great and people are asking, we want in, do this for remittance, do this for payments, can we use this for all this? But we had to look at what is our desire to solve this? How profitable is it to solve? How long will it take to solve? And do we have the skill to solve this? And by gauging all the opportunities, we went through, and we're still navigating the space right now because we still get opportunities and saying, please come do this. Like the tip last week was about the relationship between Seychelles and South Africa. We need to do a payment gateway between the two. Loop can be the payment gateway. But when do we actually do this? So when it came to this thing, my main takeout is if you do what your customers need, you'll always have a customer. And I think that's kind of a spin on the customer's always right. But it doesn't mean the customer's complaints are always right. It means that the customer's needs are always right. If you can service your customer and make sure whatever product you're building actually solves the problem for your customer, you will always have a customer. And that's what we've done as Loop. We understood that we solve things in payments, we built digital payments, and now it was about utility. How do we use this platform we built? And where is the easiest, the lowest hanging fruits for us to implement this technology into? So we went with the mobility space first, because Imtiaz, his family is in mobility. He comes from mobility. So we knew it was easy for us to pull through doing things in mobility, and we had the relationships already. Relationships are so important with any business. So those were the low-hanging fruits for us, and that's why we went with that. And now we're still developing more relationships. We're still developing more techniques to use our platform. People are coming to us with ideas. We're saying, great, let's see how we can integrate and work together. So you'll be seeing Loop on, I'm not going to mention some platforms, but you'll be able to do payments with Loop. We have tap to phone. You'll be able to just use your normal cell phone to make and receive card payments. Yeah. So there's quite a bit happening.
I love that insight that the customer is not always right, but the customer's needs is always right. That for me is a really powerful statement. And it speaks to the idea that we as entrepreneurs, we often fall in love with the idea as opposed to the actual need of the entrepreneur. And to be able to understand the need, we have to listen, we have to observe, and we need to be able to iterate as we go along, as opposed to being so headstrong and stuck in a particular rut. And we see that all the time. The ability to go forward relies on us to be able to meander through some of these difficult areas of a business where we're not quite getting it right, but then to be able to adapt and overcome and improvise in a way that meets the needs of the customer. It's so valuable. And I think, Jamie, there's a view that fintech is inaccessible. It's the domain of the programmer or the developer or the super smart, finance guy or, the actuary or so on. And yet, here we have two cocky young entrepreneurs, true South Africans, forging the way here. And what can you tell the township entrepreneur or the Cape Flats entrepreneur? What word of perspective can you provide for them?
First, I will say it's not about fintech, because people even like saying, "Oh, we need to build an app." As AI, don't use these buzzwords. First, find out what the problem is. If you better understand the problem, you can then look at what are my options for solutions. The solution doesn't always mean fintech. The solution doesn't always mean AI. The solution isn't always digital. Unpack your opportunities. Let me say it like this. There's a story I tell students when I do little lectures. So I'm a biotechnologist. I study science. And in science, we take science as fact. Science is law. However, in science can prove a theory, but you also need to understand there might be different alternative solutions to the same theory. And it doesn't mean that your observation is correct. For instance, there's a story of a scientist and a flea, where a scientist said, the flea listens with its legs. Okay, because we can't see the ears on the flea. Maybe it does listen with its legs. So the scientist did an experiment where it said, okay, I'm going to tell the flea to jump. And the flea jumped. Removed two legs, told the flea to jump. I didn't jump as high as the first time. Removed all the legs, told the flea to jump. I didn't jump at all. So according to the scientific premise that the flea could not hear me say jump because his legs was off. But obviously we have a brain and have logic and realize that there could be alternative solutions to this. But technically via science, it's true. He listened with his legs, he didn't hear me say jump and he didn't jump. Whereas we need to factor in what are all the other factors and reasons to create this behavior. And entrepreneurs often have great ideas, but they don't think, is my idea the best one? Do I need to make a fintech solution? Do I need to use AI? Do I need to go digital? But you need to understand what are all my options and engage your options and get creative. I don't know, whatever people need to do to get creative, but get creative and think outside the box too. That is the job of an entrepreneur. I feel like an entrepreneur needs to find the creative problems and then make money out of it. And in this space, in this context, when you ask about fintech, first of all, anyone can do fintech now. You can just tell ChatGPT, make me a program to do AI, whatever, to make a fintech thing. But everyone can do that, but you'll end up with nothing if you don't understand why you're doing this. If you don't know who you're doing this for and why they need to use your service. So that's the baseline that needs to work, because we could have done anything. Luke could have made, let's make a card system, which came up. Let's make a armband system, or let's put cameras in the taxis. All these things came up, but it was really about what is going to be the best thing for our customer. And even if it's difficult, because look, building a new payment system, we technically off the banking grid. We don't follow the same rules as banks because we own the technology ourselves. That wasn't the easy thing to do, but after listening to all the options, it was the most viable option to do for us as a business. And it was something that no one else actually done, and it set us completely apart. So I wouldn't say jump into fintech first. Yes, fintech is a buzzword. All these things are happening, but first understand the problem. And if you do want to go into it, if you do understand the problem, if you do know who your clientele is, if you do know what their needs are, just go to ChatGPT and you have a first draft. First draft is done. Now you go to actual coder. And now you say, okay, look, I want to code this thing out, help me do it. But it's accessible. And I think accessibility is only as far as your mind can reach. If you don't believe something is doable or accessible, you're not going to be able to achieve it. But if you just think, hey, I want this, go get it. Who's going to stop you?
I love that story, the anecdote to the flea. It's great because it kind of reminds me of, sometimes it feels counterintuitive the way we need to think about business. It reminds me of the Airbnb founders who, I think it was Paul Graham, the investor at Y Combinator, who, they were creating this amazingly rich tech platform, and they were sitting behind their computers the entire time. And Paul Graham said to him, well, it's not working, guys. There's no traction in this thing. And they said, well, they're sitting in Silicon Valley. There is some traction. There's a couple of landlords who are using it in New York. And Paul Graham was like, well, go to New York. Go and take photos. Help them. Like, get on the grounds, get on the streets, get to know your customers, and actually, be involved with who it is that you're serving. And that sort of counterintuitive thing of, like, instead of actually trying to be the smartest guy in the room, actually be the guy who engages with the customer and listens and understands the needs of the customer, the true needs of the customer. And I think that's such valuable advice. It's not about the technology, really. It's about the solution, right?
We spent about a year of research in the taxis, engaging with the drivers, engaging with the commuters, sitting in meetings with the taxi associations to unpack all the problems. And when we did this, here's a little tip when they're interviewing people. Don't tell them your solution first. Your solution, your idea has nothing to do with them. First, understand their problems before you tell them your solution. Because if I tell you, don't think of a pink elephant, it's too late. You're going to think of a pink elephant now. It's already in your brain. I already created a pink elephant. So you kind of skew the results of your interviews if you've already given them the answers. And it's not even their answers, it's your answers. If I tell you, oh, wouldn't it be great to pay via WhatsApp? Oh, that sounds amazing. Yeah, let's do it. It's just like me asking people, would you give to charity? And I've done this. Would you give to charity? People say yes. They always say yes. Then I put my hand out and I don't get nothing. Because what people say is because I've already said the charity and I already gave them the words. And now their action isn't because of what they're actually going to do naturally. Their action is because of what I've planted in them. So be very cognizant about how you have conversations with your customers. If you're going to come in and say, oh, I have a business idea. I want to do earpods that works with your eyebrows. Just think of that now. And people say, oh, that sounds kind of cool. That sounds amazing. I wonder how that's going to work. Oh, when I blink once, it's volume up. When I blink twice, sounds amazing. But then you build this whole tech and no one buys it. You should have first understood, is there a problem with people's ears? And there might be a niche market where people do have an ear problem and they need to put the AirPods on their eyebrows. So first do the research, first engage without trying to indoctrinate people with your solution. Because I know as entrepreneurs, we get so excited. Oh, I solved something. I made something. I have an idea. We get so excited about it. And then it ends up not going anywhere because we faked it. We made people believe our thing is great without actually finding out from them how their feelings are and what they struggle with.
I think you've landed upon something which is so valuable in that, South Africa and Africa, but primarily South Africa, I would say, has such a rich legacy of fintech startups, like Yoko and Jumo and Payfast and Time Bank and SnapScan and Zapper and Mama Money, many of whom have been on the Heavy Shift platform before, and now Loop. It feels like, we've spoken to so many of these individuals, the founders of these great companies, and they are so willing to look at the problems. And Lord knows in Africa, we've got so many problems. But those problems provide opportunities. And those opportunities are there for the taking if you're willing to do the factory floor research, if you're willing to go into the taxi, spend a year just speaking with your target audience. And I love that, Jamie. It's such a valuable insight that you're providing. I see there's a couple of questions in the chat as well. And I think, one of the things that seems to be coming up is international payments and whether or not Loop would be an applicable solution. And if so, how? How would you
Thanks
be able to?
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I love the question. Thank you, Rudy, for the question, because this is something we actually are working on right now. Look, we have a timeline of events that we're doing in the company. So it's not top priority right now for remittance. But via WhatsApp, I can pay anybody in the world anytime, with no bank charges, just via WhatsApp. So the solution that they add to this, however, is real-time payments and currency conversion. We do have the plugin already for currency conversion. And the nice thing about Loop, because our payments are instant and it's time stamped, we can give you the exact moment the currency conversions at that time. Whereas the reason why there's other places like you mentioned a few names of other companies or these banks or those things when they have to do currency conversion, they charge you quite a bit of a buffer in case the time the money lands, the currency changes. Whereas on our side, because we pay you immediately, there's no need to put a buffer on and charge you a bit more just in case the currency changes. So yes, we can do cross-border payments. Yes, we can do remittance. We are working on this at the moment, and we do have banking partners across Africa and in other countries that we have to establish this with. It's not top priority for us right now because first of all, Loop is establishing itself in South Africa. Then we'll move on to the rest of Africa and globally. But yes, we can do it. When we do launch our currency conversion system, it will be amazing, and we're going to tell people about it. I even like how simple it is because based on your country code, we use your country code to define what currency your default currency will be. So if it's plus 27, it will be Rand. If it's plus 1, it will be dollars. If it's plus 29, it will be Dubai, dirhams, or whatever it is. So we're kind of making it very smart and intuitive in how this works, but we need to have that go. I see there's other questions as well. Must we run through a few things? I like the comment from Anika about you built it for yourself, really than for your customers because you want to solve a problem. But it is kind of fun playing around with AI, man. Do it. I'm not going to discourage anyone from, if you have an idea, run through AI, build up a little bot, build up a little program, even if it is for you. And I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, if you are facing a pain point, if you are facing something difficult and you're able to build a solution, there's probably a chance that other people will pay for the exact same solution. Yeah. So you may be not onto something, you may be not wrong by building something for yourself, but it just means you haven't spoken to the right customer base yet. Find more people like you, Anika, that has the same issue, and you can give this to them.
Many great companies on the planet have been started by scratching one's own itch. You know, there's so many companies that have started little tech solutions that have blown up. I mean, Twitter is a great example. Slack is another. There's so many examples of small little side apps or you know, little features that have developed into something far more powerful. So I agree with you, Jamie. Anika, I think playing is the currency of entrepreneurs. We've got another question from I think it's JP in the chat, or John Paul, who's asking about financial compliance, which is always a thing in fintech. And how does Loop respond to the question of financial compliance, which is such a hot ticket item at the moment?
It is. So we have to also follow the rules. And I think that's what I like. It might look like I like breaking rules, but I really like following rules. And I like finding the loopholes in rules. So at Loop, without sounding like we're breaking the law, because we're not, we're completely compliant. We look at how money moves and how money gets tracked, and also our rules according to what is our responsibility and what are we accountable for. So if there is a case of money laundering, the nice thing with us, because we own the entire system, we can put trigger points in that can detect suspicious behavior. Whereas with some, and I feel it's so weird because banks have been doing this for years, but they still haven't implemented certain triggers, or I don't know, some of them are just weird like that. I don't know if the bosses are doing the money laundering themselves, that's why they haven't done it yet. But we were able to look at what goes on. We were able to get the information from Apps, our banking partner with Visa. They gave us the TPP license, and we were able to see what are the common methods of fraud or money laundering or suspicious behavior. And we're able to code that in to say, if these trigger points happen, what is our responsibility to serve it? So technically, according to the law, we don't have to tell anybody. According to the law, we're not responsible for money laundering through our system, but we have a responsibility to engage with the banking partners or with Visa to tell them we suspect something might be happening, but we have the technology, we have the ability to hold payments because it's our service. If it goes via a bank, it's kind of a long process to hold the payment. Sometimes the bank isn't even allowed to hold your payment, but because it's on our platform, we can follow our rules, which means if someone does a 10 billion rand transaction, which we think looks sus, we can actually hold the payment and do an investigation on it. So we do have our parameters now to prevent money laundering. And I think it's more a case of being a responsible company versus the law doesn't enforce this, but we're doing it out of our corporate responsibility. I also feel like we should, because we don't want to have bad rep as People don't want to use Loop because it's unsafe, because we're not regulated, because of all the things. We follow the regulations. We even do anything with the Reserve Bank and FASA, financial. My acronyms is my dyslexic going to mix my acronyms up here. But we're going to be doing a sandbox for them to look at how do we create new laws in the financial space that facilitates the new ways of payments in fintech and global development in payments. And I feel I'll rather be on the forefront of helping these legal teams develop the laws than for us to wait for the laws to impact us. And I think also any business, be proactive in who can influence your business externally and especially legally. And if you can rather be in those conversations and help them technology wise or practical wise or experience wise to say, this is what's happening on the ground. How do we work with you to ensure this happens without affecting our customer experience? Because that's one big thing. Compliance. And I have shout out to Dylan, our legal and compliance officer, because we have a lot of back and forths around. I care about user experience. He cares about the law. How do you find middle ground? So I need to better understand the law to best look at how do I work to make sure my user experience is quite fine. And I was able to figure that out with Loop. That's why you're onboarding to Loop. You just scan this thing once, you're in the system. We figured out when to do KYC, how to do KYC, and to know your client, when is it legal and when is it illegal, to make sure we are completely compliant with all our things we're doing. So that's our side. I hope I answered your things.
It's such a well-worn question, this idea of compliance in South Africa and actually in the finance and technology space in general. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I was chatting to a VC guy about 2 weeks ago who, he's so excited about South Africa and, the surrounding countries because he thinks that it's a hotbed of opportunity based on the fact that, counterintuitively, we actually have some of the most progressive and conducive laws and compliancy regulations in the world for finance. Whereas if you go to, for example, the United States, it would be practically impossible to do what you're doing because every single state and every single county has, sub-regulations and all of these various clauses that you would have to adhere to, which makes it so onerous to be able to do the entrepreneurial thing,
Yeah. I will say, in their defense, laws and regulations are there to protect the people, and that is government's job. Let them do the job, and let's see how you can work together with government and regulators.
Yeah. So my friend said conducive, not lax. I think we're certainly not lax here. We do have some stringent compliancy and regulatory criteria that we need to adhere to. I think, and also I think it made me smile when you spoke about acronyms because there almost needs to be a whole semester in a university degree devoted to acronyms for South African business landscape. Because
we love our acronyms in South Africa.
there's a lot we've got to understand and know going forward. So we've got a question here from Louis who asks, how do you avoid bloat in your organization as you grow? And I mean, being a tech company, that's something that the dream is to be as light and lean as possible in your infancy. But as you grow, which you clearly are, given your latest evaluation, where do you strike that balance?
Sometimes, especially with a startup, and I think entrepreneurs know this, you have to kind of do everything in the beginning. You the complaints person, you the dev, you the security to open the office in the morning. There's all these different roles, and I think the simplest thing, and what I've also learned, is you need to understand what you need and what you need when. There is times you double up and then your workload becomes too much and you realize I need to get someone to do this specific task. So to avoid the bloat, or if I understand the bloat correctly, is managing tasks. And when you add on more team members, make sure you have the scope of work before the time. Because you don't want things to get lost in translation or you don't want things to get misunderstood. And sometimes people also scale too fast, too quickly. And that also can become very detrimental to a company because now you have all the salaries to pay, but you don't have the clients to compensate. And we ran Loop very lean and very bootstrapped. And I think we're still bootstrapping. We're trying to be as conservative as possible. We're trying to make sure we make the proper hires. And it's also difficult as a startup getting good hires because you don't have good hire money. So you have to kind of pull favors or do certain things. And sometimes people aren't always the best at everything, but find out what your team, what each person is really good at and what the skill set they have, what skill set they're lacking. I feel like for an organization or a startup, there is about 5 candidate types you need to make a very successful organization. Number one, your visionary. This is usually your CEO, where we're going to go as a company, what we're doing, how things are working, head in the clouds. Then you have, which complements the visionary really nicely, is your executor. This is how we're going to do it. Whatever the CEO says, whatever the visionary says, this is how it's practical to actually implement and do it. But for the practicality, you also need to have your analyst of understanding what are we doing, why are we doing it, how are we doing it, does the data match up on having this work? Then the role that I like is your networker. Because you can have the most brilliant idea and brilliant business, but if you can't get people to put a message together and communicate this and do deals and create relationships, then you wouldn't have the you wouldn't have a business to push out. It'll be like you singing in your shower and you're the only person that can hear this and you're never going to win idols. Then you also have your innovator. And all this works together. So the innovator's job is take the analytics from the analyst, look at what the visionary wants to do, and then the innovator looks at how do I actually build this and give this to the executor to build out, and then tell the communicator, the connector, this is what we have to share as a company. So I think finding a nice mix between those 5 characters, whether it's one person that's all 5, sure, multiple personality disorder, but or you find a team member that has a few of these skills. Because if I look at Imtiaz and I, there's clearly skill sets that both of us have where I know when it comes to actually doing the work, Imtiaz, he gets people to do the work. He makes sure, he'll ask me, what do I need? And he makes sure people get the stuff done. He's also a visionary. I'm also a visionary, but we also make sure we keep each other grounded on certain things. My head is always in the clouds. I'm a freaking weather balloon or whatever that's never really here. So get the mix of characters, and that's how you're going to make sure that you don't bloat yourself with all the same characters, or you don't bloat yourself with people that aren't necessary for the organization in the right time. And if you have all the job scopes and all the like what's the KPIs and the outcomes for this person's job, things sometimes can get messy in the beginning as a startup because we're all trying to help out, we're all trying to do everything. But once you're putting things in place, say this, Jamie, your job is this. Your job is to go speak to Fred and get onto heavy shit. That's your job. Success. Or Jamie, your job is to go take a flight to Joburg and do this. Great. We're not going to put someone in the operations team or one of our drivers. We're not going to go to our taxi drivers and say, okay, we know you have to drive this whole week here, but we're going to take you from driving and we're going to put you on a flight to Joburg and nobody's going to drive and serve a customer. So you need to balance things out and understand what is the purpose of everyone's role and how to make sure everyone's role fits. Because if I do have to move somebody around, who is my replacement? Do I have a replacement driver? If I'm sending them to Joburg, why am I sending them to Joburg? What does the analyst say about why the reason is taxi driver must go to Joburg? It needs to make sense and it needs to add up. So that's my thing of managing people and bloat. And I'm going to tell you probably one of the hardest things in business is the people you're working with. And I don't mean it hard in a bad way. I mean, it takes a lot of work and effort to find the right team and to manage the right team and to do the right things together, especially when you grow in a business. As you get more people involved in your team, the more moving parts you have. Someone is sick, someone is off, someone is this, someone is that. Someone doesn't like the way you smile, someone doesn't like the way you look at them. Not that I say this happens at the company, but the more moving parts you have, the more complicated things become and the messier things can become unless you put parameters in place and say, these are the rules. Just like I like compliance and rules and regulators, we need the same thing in the business. What are your regulations in your company? What are your guidelines? What are your policies? And have those things in place.
Stanford business professor Jim Collins used to say, find the right people for the bus and then figure out where the bus is going. And I love that because it seems like it's again quite counterintuitive. It's not like, we have to have a developer here and this, and it doesn't matter who what kind of personality they have. It's so important that you find the right people, and he often talks about culture and the fact that culture comes from the people. So it's really crucial. My old business, which was a digital marketing agency, my original co-founder Mike, we used to say that I I would be me, Fred. I would be the one who makes the promises, and Mike would keep them. So it's like this whole kind of this idea of having the dreamer in the clouds of the weather balloon and the operations person who's like in the freaking trenches, making sure that that shiz is getting done on a day-to-day basis. So I want to quickly just segue a little bit to the fact that you've managed to scale to 180 million rand valuation in under 2 years. I mean, that is intense, right? So behind the LinkedIn updates and the awards and all of that, I want to just get a little bit personal with you, if I may. Just how do you, Jamie, behind the scenes, if you don't mind lifting the bonnet a little bit, like how do you personally handle the mental pressure of such rapid growth? And you mentioned, growth sometimes is a bit of a double-edged sword, right?
I think I didn't notice it. To me, I feel like we're growing too slow. And I think that's the case of entrepreneurs, where I can see where the business needs to go. And it almost frustrates me sometimes. I'm like, we're not moving fast enough. We're not doing enough. We're not moving. And I realized I have to get told quite a bit, because we have a lot of staff now, that the way I work and NTRs is the same. We work all the time. We work morning to night, after hours. We literally know we can phone each other right now. And we're like, hey, this is what's happening. Can we do something about it? Whatever. Whereas I had to learn that with other staff, they have to take lunch breaks, which is very, very strange. Because we work and we don't take lunch. I work throughout the day. I have meetings back to back and there's no lunch break. And even though that's how I work, I still feel like I'm not doing enough. And if you want to get personal, I even went to go see a psychologist about the stuff, because even the awards that we win, it's like we get an award today and tomorrow it's like, okay, what's next? I don't even get to enjoy the grace that comes with winning an award. It's just, okay, great, we got to put on the shelf next. What's the next thing? What has to be done today? And it's kind of detrimental psychologically to myself, I've been told, because I need to be in the moment and enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy what I'm doing, but the awards doesn't mean anything to me. It's, am I achieving my goals? And some people will stop at, oh, I'm just trying to get the best in Africa. Okay, I got that award now. Some people would have stopped, like, cool, this is all we need. But to me, it's like, okay, that was like so last year. Even you said now the valuation of 180 million. Yeah, that's old valuation now. I need more. I need to increase this business. I need to do the most. And and the stuff we're doing is increasing the valuation. So I think for me, if I look at how it affects me personally, it might be that because I'm never satisfied, I'm not going to stop. And it's more a case of a struggle actually to stop. Where I know I'm working towards retirement, I'm working towards an exit. That's what founders do. You build a business and as an entrepreneur, you put all the work in. You're not going to get paid a normal salary like everybody else, but you're doing the time so that you can rest later. It's either a case of rest now and earn a minimum wage or whatever wage, or work your ass off right now and take an early retirement and take a vacation. And my mindset's on, I want to relax. So I'm going to do as much as I can right now so that in a few years' time, I can take it easy. And even then, I think I'm fooling myself because I don't know if I'm really going to take it easy in a few years' time. But that's what it feels like for me. How do I cope with this mentally? I think we all have to be a little crazy if you want to be an entrepreneur anyway. So I'm just dealing with it because I know what I'm working towards.
Here's to the crazy ones. I mean, I think we need to talk in 5 years' time. When you do the big exit, or 10 years' time, whenever it is, we need to have that discussion, because my bet is that you're going to be looking for the next thing to do. I just on the note of multitasking. This is a picture of the Heavy Chef team in Pretoria right now, all having lunch whilst live recipes. So shout out to Yolandi, Khomotso, and Mo. I see there's a couple of questions, and we are running low on time. So very quickly, I mean, what's Devin asked, what's the projected path for Loop in terms of the next 5 years? Do you have an idea of where you're going?
Yeah, we do have quite the path. There's a lot of technology we're going to be building out. We're focusing that now on our corporate mobility software and how do we serve our corporates even better. Then we're also looking at a lot of things on the payment side. We've got the new Tap to Phone app coming out that we're busy working on. We have looked at things in remittance. We also look at alternative payment methods like Pay with Palm that we've We've scoped it. We're going to be getting the technology for this too, where you can use your hand to make payments. So within 5 years, we do want to do a bigger push outside of South Africa, but first capture South Africa. We've got an office in Joburg as well. And we're looking at getting into the other provinces too. And then looking at pushing out our financial services, as in access to finance, access to insurance, access to quite a lot of extra things that can happen to push out our product even more. We built an insurance product as well with Santam. We're building, yeah, there's a few things in the pipeline, but I think it's going to be quite exciting. Just that we also learned sometimes you have to partition things. Like my brain also partitions things, and that businesses need to be partitioned. So we're looking at getting managers in to run the different business segments. Like from insurance, we have someone else going to run insurance. We've got the fleet management, I've got someone else running the fleet management. And that's how we're looking at making things work so they can work independently with us being the overarching company as Loop, but we have things that supplement our business. That's not too far off, but it actually brings in more business for us without us deviating too far or taking up our time to run those other businesses. So I'm excited for the 5-year plan. It's going to be quite good. We're going to shake the world.
We have our eye on you, so I think it's amazing what you're doing. And in terms of compartmentalizing and partitioning, one of the partitions is your work as an Invest Cape Town ambassador. So John Paul asked, what are you doing with that, and how are you how is it helping you with Loop, and also, where do you see the future of Cape Town in the South African tech environment?
So I'll say this, it doesn't even feel like I'm doing anything different, because my role as a Cape Town ambassador is to look at bringing in jobs, creating jobs in the Western Cape, showcasing innovation in the Western Cape, and bringing in investors in the Western Cape. That's my normal day to day. So I've got the title, I'm doing the work, but it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything different. It just means that now I have more, it's more conscious over my decisions on what do I do and what fits in with my goals. So me traveling to other countries, me traveling to other provinces, engaging with people, bringing people back to South Africa and Cape Town to talk about what we can do here, enhancing the BPO sector. That's one of the biggest things. If I can make the BPO sector thrive in Western Cape, that means Loop's going to thrive. It means that my business is going to be able to supply them with mobility and transport. So none of these things feel, even though my roles, my hats are compartmentalized, the basic thing that I'm doing is the same. Make more jobs, innovate, and bring in investment into Cape Town. So that's my thing.
There's a great question here, I think, from Hansi, who's asked, as an entrepreneur, how do you plan to mentally and emotionally prepare for an exit? And this is something that a dear friend of Heavy Chefs, Andrew Smith, who started and sold Yappy Chef, he spoke about and now has written a book about this idea of emotionally separating something that became an identity for so long. And he's spoken on the Heavy Chef stage about it. But how do you prepare for something, an exit that on something that you've worked so hard on for so long?
We are quite emotional beings, and often as entrepreneurs, these are our kids. We build businesses and we raise them and we grow them and we nurture them, and these are our kids. We don't want to see it lose or thrive, and it's more a case of realizing of the feeling of not being able to trust other people with your baby, because you'll give up your baby essentially. And I think the mental preparation, because I'm trying to mentally prepare for this with Loop as well. But where I'm going to feel safe is if I know I'm getting the good team that can do everything that I was doing, all the roles I was fulfilling, get the people in place to do those roles. So I know mentally that my business and my baby is in good hands. So when I leave, the point of leaving and exiting isn't just about, I wouldn't say make a clean exit. I wouldn't encourage people to do a clean exit. Clean exit is you sell all your shares. I would say if you're clever, if you know you got a good business, you do a buyout, but you still keep some shares in place so you can still create dividends off the growth of your business. And if you have the right people in place, your business your baby can still grow, whether you're there or not. And I feel any entrepreneur, whether you're doing an exit or not, you need to push yourself to the point where you can have this business run without you being there. If you can't have the business number without you being there, then your business isn't going to scale. And once you know it can number out you, then you can be emotionally prepared to say, actually, this baby is doing fine. I can take a seat back. I can do an exit and I can go invest into the next project. But it's more really about planning and trust. If you can't trust who you hand this baby over to, you're going to have anxiety. You're going to feel, I need to see, is everything okay? Because my brand is attached. If people can't do my brand justice, people are going to look at me and think, that's Jamie's business. That's Fred's business. Look how bad it's doing now. Fred exited a long time ago. Jamie exited a long time, but you're still attached. So you need to be able to know that when I do exit, everything will be fine. And you can start planning that now already. If I have to go to Joburg, I need to make sure my team's okay back home. If I have to go to another country, I must make sure, is my team doing well? So you have to start building and instilling that trust now already.
So there's just one quick question, which is a direct follow-on from Hansi's question, which is essentially, when you talk about this baby and giving it the baby, there's a part of that. There's a small emotional part of that when one takes on investment. And you have spoken in the past about finding the right funding model, right? And for a young founder in the audience today, or in the heavy chef community, when we distribute this conversation, and certainly somebody who's desperate for cash, how do you tell the difference between good money and bad money when you are apportioning ownership of this baby to somebody who's now going to give you that money?
First of all, if you're starting off with being desperate for cash, stop right there. Don't go into a deal being desperate for cash. Then you'll just then your mind is, I need to survive, and your decision making will not be on an executive level, because you can either do a survival instinct decision, a emotional decision, or an executive decision. You need to understand how are you making these decisions. If you understand what your value is and your worth and what you're trying to do, go into a discussion in business around those factors. Because taking money from someone is like getting married to them. They now have more control over your business. They now have more influence over your business. And if the person's personality, if the person's goals, if their motives doesn't match yours, you're going to have problems. So first understand with money. I'll first say get grant money first. Government, South Africa has a lot of grant money. Go for grant money first. If you need to get an investor, look at who have they invested in before. Why are they, don't try to convince them to invest in you. Try to think, why would they want to invest in you? What is their reason for investing? Is it because they like you? Is it because they want the business? Is it because they've got another business that works with us? Because once you understand those things, you can better see how much or how little or what influence they're going to have in your business. Also look at, do they bring not just money, but strategic development, strategic partnerships into your space? Because now you give up half of your business to somebody that can't even bring, you got the money, but now you're doing all the work and they're just getting paid. So especially in the beginning of your business, be very strategic over who you get into bed with to make this baby.
Jamie, we've got 3 minutes. And first of all, a huge thank you to you for your time. Secondly, I want to give you your word for the talk that you have to insert when you speak to all the mobility folks in your upcoming presentation.
Oh God.
The word is
I'm nervous.
Bliksem. The word is Bliksem.
Bliksem.
Okay. Bliksem.
Okay.
Okay, so Bliksem. Okay. You have to use that word, and we're going to be checking up on you. Yeah. And then the third question, and it's the final question before we let you go and you on your flight. Jamie, we asked this of you in the interview, but we want to ask it again of you. And you're welcome to use a different answer this time. How do you, reaching into your belly, into your heart, what is your secret ingredient?
My secret ingredient? Definitely the secret ingredient is understand your customer. I can't waver away from that. If you don't understand your customer, if you don't understand their needs, if you don't understand what they need from you and how you can deliver that, you're not going to have a business. So my secret ingredient definitely is be customer centric. Like really know your customer inside and out, and know all your opportunities in customers. So I'm sticking to my guns there. Customer centricity is the way.
Jamie, you're a treat. You're a legend. You're a polymath, and you're somebody that inspires all of us. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. You've done so well in the last couple of years, and we look forward to supporting you in the next phase of your journey. We will speak to you in 5 years' time when you've achieved a whole bunch of goals and you're looking at that early retirement. And we will hold you accountable to that, because we know that you're going to be onto some other big world-changing startup. I just want to say thank you to everybody in the audience and everybody who's going to be watching this in the future. This community rocks, and we're so grateful to the Heavy Chef team as well for all the work that's happening behind the scenes. And Jamie, good luck for today's talk. I hope it's one bliksem of a good talk.
It will be a bliksem of a talk. I must mention, none of this is of myself alone. I know you talk with the men saying, oh, Jamie, you've achieved this and all this, but the team, thank you so much to the Loop team. They've been going over and beyond. They're working way more than me collectively. So really, the team is fantastic. So big shout out to the Loop team. You guys did an amazing work. Thanks for making me have the trust to leave you guys and do the most. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jamie. Safe travels, my man, and we'll catch up soon. Take care, sir. And bye, everybody. Have a great Tuesday. Bye-bye.